Hello, everyone. I wanted to share my experience with mechanical CPR and why I believe I have some healthy reservations about it. Now, you've likely already heard about the data and how the data doesn't necessarily show improved survival rates or improved, survival to neurological discharge. And I believe, based on my own experience and based on the consensus of many of the experts in the area that I know, I believe that I might have a valid reason why. So I'm going to share some of our data with you. And just to give you a little background before I do, we do detailed post-event review. So for every single cardiac arrest, we look at the depth, the rate, the depth, the rate, the number of pauses. So we see all of the pause intervals, and we see if someone was leaning on the chest, if they didn't allow full recoil. So let me go ahead and switch over and share this with you. So what you're looking at here is a full summary of the performance, and I can kind of hover over particular data points, and it will give me like a reading. So for example, if I look at the rate, if I can kind of just scroll through here, I can see what the rate's looking like. I can also go to playback and get a more minuscule breakdown of everything, so I can really zoom in and see each compression, but I'm not going to do that for the purposes of what we're talking about here. Now, I do think that if you're placing mechanical CPR, or even if you're not, you need to look at this data, and this data is available for every monitor. So for your monitor that you use, it is available. Might look a little different, but it's similar data. So our standard is to not place the Lucas for the first 10 minutes. And I think that I'll be able to explain why here. So you see what we did early in the cardiac arrest, we defibrillated. If you have good bystander CPR and someone gets on scene quickly, the patient's most likely still in the electrical phase, where if we deliver a shock immediately, we're more likely to get to convert that rhythm to an organized rhythm with a palpable pulse. So that is our goal. So we defer mechanical CPR because there is a sweet spot in the cardiac arrest, and if you're going to get a pulse back, you're most likely going to get that pulse back within the first 10 minutes. So why would we place a mechanical CPR device and interrupt CPR early in the arrest when our priority needs to be on minimal interruptions and high quality CPR and defibrillation? And not in this case in particular, but in some cases you can see very long excessive pauses in CPR when trying to place a mechanical CPR device, and we use the Lucas. Now, so we do use the Lucas, all right? I don't not like mechanical CPR. If we have to move a patient, it's mandatory. But we don't place it early. We definitely don't place it immediately. It is not our priority. So anyway, you see some variation in the depth here. There's quite a bit of variation. Why is there no shock from this shock to this shock? Because I presume that it was not shockable. But anyway, you see some slight variation, but a fairly consistent depth. So this was actually whoever was doing CPR, or whoever those that were doing CPR were, they were doing good, high quality CPR. And for the most part, their release velocity was good until we get into here, and I'm going to explain this. But for the most part, they were really allowing that chest to recoil naturally. Now, you'll see quite some time goes by. I would estimate roughly 20, little more than 20 minutes, and they decide, all right, we're going to place this patient on the Lucas. And I can kind of explain why that might be. Our minimum scene time requirement is 20 minutes, with some exceptions for patients that have a gravid uterus that are in a cardiac arrest, or patients that are candidates for ECMO and stuff like that. So anyway, you'll see that they placed the Lucas device, and they placed the Lucas device right about here. How do I know that? Well, that accounts for the longest pause of this whole cardiac arrest, right? Because the first Lucas compression was right about here, and I can go on the other end and see exactly when that was placed and how long that pause interval was. I could actually scroll down here and show you. So the longest pause was 16 seconds, 39. Second longest was 12 seconds, 37. That is likely from this big gap that you see here. Now, I know that the Lucas was placed because this CPR is very, very consistent. It's almost too perfectly consistent for manual CPR. And that's the problem. You'll see that the depth was not good, and actually it kept getting worse. So you'll see it gradually get shallower, shallower, and shallower. It started off kind of okay, but it gets shallower, shallower, and shallower. And then suddenly, if you look at the rate here, so we've got a very consistent rate, and then you'll see a very inconsistent fast rate, all right? So what I expect happened here was they realized that the Lucas was moving, it was walking. It likes to pivot as it's pushing on the chest, and as it pivots, it can walk down, it can walk up. So what I expect happened here was they realized that the Lucas was not positioned properly, so they had someone in position ready to go. They paused it, took over manual CPR, and as you're trying to do shallow compressions under the Lucas suction cup, you're probably going to go faster than you should be. And at this point, I'd say that we might not have had the metronome on. But anyway, they're doing really fast compressions, reposition the Lucas, and now it's fine, right? It's a little deeper than 2.4 inches, but it's better than not being deep enough. But there was a very long period of not so good CPR, a very long period of not so good CPR. And you can actually see that is consistent with a lower end-tidal CO2, right? If you're not doing good CPR, your end-tidal CO2 is going to be lower. And then about the point where they reposition the Lucas, you get a higher CO2. So what are my take-home points from here? Well, 1, don't place the Lucas right away. 2, if you're placing the Lucas at all, monitor it like this. 3, the new standard in our department is that you take a Sharpie and you kind of do a half moon on the patient's chest right around the Lucas suction cup so that you can see if it's moving. It's a better way to visually recognize any movement. And is that 3 or 4? Not sure what I'm on now, but the last one is always use the neck strap. Always has to be mandatory. Now, I know it gets lost. Some people say, what neck strap? In fact, I was at a meeting in a hospital, and they were showing some x-rays recently of a patient who did have the Lucas on, and you could see the back plate, and it was placed way too low. And then I said, do you all use the neck strap? And all the nurses said, what neck strap? So you should have the neck strap. A good way to not lose that is to just simply zip tie one end so that it's a little harder to get lost. But anyway, I hope that you found this information helpful and meaningful. And if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.